Call it a cliche, but like almost every other person on this website who loves and talks about fashion, I love the movie The Devil Wears Prada. I know. Surprise, surprise. Now, loving fashion and loving The Devil Wears Prada are not mutually inclusive. What I mean by that is liking one does not mean you automatically like the other one, but really it is no surprise. The Devil Wears Prada was one of those movies that I can't remember watching for the first time. It was just always there in my mind. It was always there for me to watch. And it's one that I would rewatch constantly. See also Ratatouille and Aquamarine. It came out when I was in like early elementary school, so I definitely did not see this movie in theaters. But I remember the DVD never not being in the house, which is how I would watch it and how I started watching it at such a young age. I can quote the whole movie. I know every scene. I know every outfit. And for the longest time, it was my comfort watch when I was still at an age where I didn't really like to get out of my comfort zone. Nowadays, it's been a while since I have gone out of my way to rewatch it, probably because I so oversaturated my viewing experience when I was young, but I still love it. I don't know what it was about this movie that captivated me so, but it really should have been my first indication that I was destined to be involved in the fashion industry in some capacity. It was an exciting movie that portrayed something to aspire to, although at the time when I was watching it constantly, I didn't really know what the movie was about. Do you know what I mean? Do you have those movies where they're so entertaining and exciting and fun to watch, but you really don't understand what the plot is about? Like the part, especially at the end, when, spoiler alert, Miranda talks about doing everything she could to save her job. Didn't really understand what that scene was about. Other movies that were like this for me were Inception, being one of them.
High octane, so fun and exciting.
And action-y. Did not understand what that movie was about until much later on. And I watched the movie Inception all the time because it was so fun and exciting. But I was just there for vibes. In any case, 20 years later, and The Devil Wears Prada is still culturally relevant. It is still referenced to this day. It's so popular. It is even getting a sequel coming out this year in May, which I think is so unnecessary, but don't even get me started on the state of the film industry today, okay?
Don't do it.
Another movie came out around roughly the same time period as The Devil Wears Prada, which was like the early 2000s, but it never quite achieved the same level of success and achieved the same level of longevity as The Devil Wears Prada. And that movie is Confessions of a Shopaholic, which came out in 2009. I have only seen this movie twice before in my life. Once many, many years ago, probably close to when it actually came out. Not when it did actually come out, but close to when it came out. And the second time a couple of years ago or last year. I don't know, but very, very recently. I watched it on a whim. I wanted to watch something light and fun. And despite how similar they are, I was struck by how poorly Confessions of a Shopaholic has seemed to age compared to The Devil Wears Prada. Why has one stuck around for so long, become so popular, so culturally relevant still, while the other one has been seemingly forgotten? And that's the question I want to answer today. And so in this video, I want to do a movie comparison between The Devil Wears Prada and Confessions of a Shopaholic, talk about The Devil Wears Prada's success and longevity compared to what Confessions of a Shopaholic did and basically what it was unable to capture. But before we get any further, hello, welcome or welcome back. So good to see you. So good to have you here. My name is Alyssa. I make videos about fashion, mostly. Sometimes I make videos about other miscellaneous pop culture things, sometimes about movies, sometimes movies about fashion, like this one. It's all just a hodgepodge going on. Sometimes I just have a lot of thoughts going on up here, and they really need to be out. They need to live out in the world. But anyways, I'm glad you're here. Let's get into it. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, oh goodness me, let's do a quick recap on both movies so we are all on the same page, so we are all caught up to speed, starting with The Devil Wears Prada. The Devil Wears Prada starts with our protagonist, Andy Sachs. She is an aspiring journalist who takes a job at a fashion magazine called Runway. Basically, out of desperation, she really just needs to get her foot in the door. Even though she didn't do any research about what this job is, what the magazine is, she has no interest in fashion or the fashion industry.
What makes you think I'm not interested in fashion?
And shockingly enough, she actually lands the job. As she works this job, we see her life get turned upside down by the demands of the fashion industry and especially by her boss, the editor-in-chief of the magazine, Miranda Priestley. And at the beginning of the movie, Andy is very disparaging of the fashion industry, of fashion journalism, and she does not really take her job seriously. She sees this merely as a stepping stone to get a real job in real journalism. But through all of the trials and tribulations, Andy not only becomes competent at her job, but also good at her job. So much so that she kind of like overtakes the other assistant, Emily Charlton, who has been there longer, to accompany Miranda to Paris Fashion Week, which is like a very coveted position. And as it so often does, is that true? I don't know. I'm stereotyping. As she's working this job, the fashion industry sucks Andy in with all of its glamour and glitz and charm, and she sees herself turning into the type of person she hated before working this job. The type of person she swore she wouldn't become.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Her life further falls apart and she has to reckon with the person she has become. Realize this is not who she is. This is not what she stands for. This is not what she wants out of life, out of her job. And so she quits to find a journalist job elsewhere, serious journalist job elsewhere. And she reconciles with all of the people she hurt along the way. On the other hand, Confessions of a Shopaholic is about Shopaholic, Rebecca Bloomwood, who works with her best friend Suze at some kind of gardening magazine, although her dream job is to work at Alette, which is a high fashion magazine. It's like the equivalent to Vogue in the real life or Runway in The Devil Wears Prada. And there is just one problem. Well, actually there are two. One, there's only one position at Alette, which Rebecca does not get. And also two, Rebecca is in deep debt. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. She's in deep debt due to a severe shopping addiction due to the aforementioned shopaholic tendencies. Through a big mix-up though, Rebecca is able to land a job at a magazine called Financial Saving. But I always want to call it Financial Savings. Wouldn't it make more sense if it was called Financial Savings? Who names the magazine Financial Savings? Whatever, I am getting off topic. Okay, but her landing this job called Financial Savings is the big irony. But the thing is, this magazine is under the same parent company as Alette. So Rebecca, like Andy, sees this job as a stepping stone to get to Alette magazine. Rebecca starts an anonymous financial advice column at Successful Savings magazine to great success, which is to her credit. Even though she is lying about her credentials, she's lying about the experience she has in finance. Or, now hear me out, is she just hyping up her resume? Everything with her lying, about her work experience and her shopping addiction, comes to a head with her boss Luke, for whom she has developed feelings, even with her best friend Suze. And so she risks everything to come clean about her shopping addiction and her debt and her real motivations for taking the job at Successful Savings magazine. But of course, she's able to make up with everyone at the end. She's also able to pay off all her debts, and she also still has a job she loves. I have almost no lasting memories of this movie. I remember thinking it was fun. It was fine. I didn't not like it. The only scenes I remember from this movie are when the Alette editor-in-chief visits Rebecca's parents and she gets a little tiny slice of cake. I remember Rebecca whacking her credit card out of a block of ice with her heel. And I remember the scene at the very end with the pennies. If you know, you know. That was it. So rewatching it last year basically felt like watching it for the very first time. In my opinion, I think partly why Confessions, I'm just going to shorten it to Confessions, okay? I think partly why Confessions did not withstand the test of time was because of its silliness and, dare I say, even campiness. Because it definitely is more silly than The Devil Wears Prada. Taking on more comedic effects and delivery, it leaned a lot more into comedy than The Devil Wears Prada. It did a lot of physical comedy as well. But I want to first compare their similarities and their differences, the aforementioned silliness being one of those differences. Both protagonists also had different goals and career aspirations. While Rebecca desperately wanted to get the job at Alette, a fashion magazine, Andy only took her job at Runway, the fashion magazine, out of desperation because she needed a job, any job that was remotely related to journalism. And so in that way, Rebecca always took the fashion industry seriously. She always loved fashion. Whereas Andy was condescending and dismissive of her job, of fashion in general, lest we forget the infamous cerulean blue scene. That scene is legendary. That scene is iconic, and I am doing my best to lean into that scene, if you couldn't already tell. And so Andy's learning process of the fashion industry is not frivolous. It demands respect, is part of her learning arc. It is part of her whole character arc. And yeah, don't get me wrong, the fashion industry can be a little bit or sometimes a lot ridiculous, but it is no less worthy of respect. That's what I mean. But this leads me into the different ways both movies use fashion as a tool to propel the story forward. Rebecca's relationship with fashion is more driven by her shopaholic consumerist tendencies. She loves a good accessory. She understands the power a killer pair of shoes can lend her. We see her wear so many different colors, prints, textures, fabrics, silhouettes. It's kind of crazy. And it ends up being that her love of fashion and clothes is her downfall. But we also see her use it as a weapon, a beacon of self-confidence, a beacon of hope, if you will.
This is a shining beacon of hope.
Which is exactly what fashion is all about. It is an expression of self. It is its own art form. Andy's style transforms throughout the movie from frumpy, lumpy, sad, shapeless sack to Chanel boots, high glamour, high fashion, to classy journalist. I'm not going to go too in-depth into a whole fashion analysis of the movie. There are plenty of other videos that do that, but I will say that fashion, costume design is used as a tool to show Andy's growth throughout the movie. It's a way for her to learn more about the fashion industry as a whole, its history, its creativity, and we do see that reflected in her clothes as her opinions and attitudes toward the fashion industry change. The romantic interests are different too. Confessions of a Shopaholic is more of a rom-com, a romantic comedy, because one of its central storylines is Rebecca's budding romance with her boss, Luke. In The Devil Wears Prada, Andy is already in a relationship with her boyfriend. Don't even remember his name, fails me now. But we see that crumble and break down as Andy gets sucked into the fashion industry and they break up near the end of the movie. So I would not personally say that this is a rom-com. I don't think it is classified as such. I would say this is more of a dramedy, like a drama comedy. And although rom-coms shouldn't not be taken seriously in the film industry, I think they really are more so products of their time, most of them anyways, and they don't age as well as to still be relevant beyond maybe like a nostalgic rewatch. And that, I think, is what contributes to Confessions' lack of modern relevance. Lastly, one of the biggest differences is costume design. Both movies' costumes were designed by Patricia Fields, which is so interesting and unexpected because they are vastly different in direction and tone. Confessions is loud and maximalist and colorful and playful. It leans very heavily into 2000s trends. It mixes a whole bunch of different patterns and colors and textures and prints, and they really go heavy on the accessories. Patricia Fields even said in an interview, "The style is young and fresh, younger than Sex and the City or The Devil Wears Prada. Rebecca Bloomwood is put together as though she is in designer clothes all the time, even if she isn't wearing designer clothes. She tends to wear sexy, short dresses and skirts without being too overt, and coordinates her outfit with a bright colored coat." But even though the fashion/costume design is really fun, it also means it doesn't age as well. The Devil Wears Prada has a much more classic, timeless, but still very fashionable and fashion-forward costume design. Not everything works, don't get me wrong, like some of the accessories and the hats, but most of it does. They used a lot of designer and vintage archival pieces. The wardrobe budget was pretty limited, so Patricia Fields said she had to call on a lot of connections within the industry to fill out the wardrobe for the movie. She said in an interview with EW, "I have a relationship with Chanel, and when I called them, they were very happy to work with me on this movie because they wanted to see Chanel on a young girl to give it another point of view, making Chanel not just middle-aged women in suits, but youthful and funky." Fields said in an interview that she was very deliberate about using classic, timeless pieces that couldn't be traced back to any one particular designer or any one particular time period. She said, "Same for Meryl regarding Donna Karan. Meryl wore some Prada, she wore different things. There wasn't just one thing. When Meryl went to work, a lot of it was from Donna Karan archive. It was important to me because in trying to create a style for this character, I didn't want the clothing to be current on the runway or in the magazines and be recognizable." In my opinion, almost all of the outfits in The Devil Wears Prada could be worn today and not look out of place, or the movie could be released for the first time today and it would not look outdated. In another interview, Fields also said, "I'm very happy to say that I think her style holds up. I think that the style of the whole movie holds up. If your originality is based in a classic, then you trim it with other layers that give it uniqueness. It's not a copy from a magazine or trends. Time is going to kill it very quickly if you go that route." So this was probably a conscious choice on Fields' part, the difference between The Devil Wears Prada and Confessions. Rebecca is much more fashion forward. She's much more of a fashionista than Andy, but I still think it's really interesting that Fields was aware of this and still decided to go down such vastly different routes with these two movies. Maybe she just wanted to have more fun in dressing the Rebecca character. I don't know. But let's talk about similarities. Both of these movies are based on books. Confessions of a Shopaholic, the book, was published in 2000 and the movie was released in 2009. The Devil Wears Prada book was published in 2003 and the movie was released in 2006. So it was a much quicker turnaround. However, The Devil Wears Prada was partially inspired by the author's experience working in fashion journalism at Vogue under Anna Wintour. Rumor has it that the character Miranda Priestley was partially based off of Anna Wintour. Both books have sequels. The protagonists of both are aspiring journalists who somehow land jobs outside of their desired profession, leading to the classic fish out of water awkward experience, you know. Both movies were also costumed by Patricia Fields, which I mentioned earlier, and both portray elements of eating disorder, though perhaps The Devil Wears Prada a little bit more so, which is just emblematic of the time they were released, the early 2000s, and the fashion industry in general. But despite all of their similarities, of which there are more than differences, how did The Devil Wears Prada rise above Confessions of a Shopaholic to be more memorable, to be the cooler, prettier older sister? Let's dive into it. Again, costume design feeling timeless and not dated, not being loud and maximalist and overdone, makes it easier to relate to the outfits, especially over time. A lot of the pieces by Rebecca just feel like too much, frankly. The pom-poms, scarves, fur trim, chains, gloves, peep-toe heels. Like, I feel like Confessions of a Shopaholic walked so Emily in Paris could run, which funnily enough, Patricia Fields consulted as a costume designer for Emily in Paris. The Devil Wears Prada was also a little bit more serious in tone. It had some more serious moments. For example, Miranda's vulnerable moment with Andy when they're going over the seating chart in Paris. And although Confessions has great character depth with Rebecca's shopping addiction, how it affects her relationships, her progress in overcoming that, it also felt less serious. Like the scene where she's tempting all the other shopping addicts to relapse basically and go shopping again.
Oh, I have to go. Good luck, everybody.
Do they have shoes?
Fine. You sit down. I'm really strong. I won't explode. I do not want to shop.
And then, of course, there were the silly excuses and all of the over-the-top antics to try to avoid the debt collector. I also don't know how I feel about the personified mannequins. I think it was creative, and I especially would love to see or read how it was written in the books. But at the same time, it still also felt just a little bit silly. Other ridiculous antics include pretending to know Finnish, the hot dog stand scarf debate at the beginning of the movie, the vacuum-packed closet that explodes, literally freezing her credit card in a block of ice, and the scene at dinner in the bathroom when all of the beads and buttons fall off of her jacket. Also, tell me why Chris Evans's brother is in this movie for like 2 minutes as a mail courier and is so goddamn oblivious.
I am one of the best, and I don't let this out of my sight. I guard it with my a lot of pressure on me. Just make sure everyone gets these letters.
I also prefer the way the Devil Wears Prada portrays Andy's work in the fashion industry. We see Andy working more in the fashion industry than Rebecca working in the finance industry. Both go to meetings, both go on business trips, but perhaps because Andy has a lot more learning and growing to do, like learning about the fashion industry, overcoming her prejudices, whereas Rebecca is able to use her shopping experiences to write her financial articles. We see Andy in more work scenarios that help her understand and appreciate the fashion industry, like on-location photo shoots, the walkthroughs, seeing the designer collections. We see Rebecca's experiences too, so she can learn about what she's doing, like going on the little field trip with Luke to crash that conference. But there are fewer and they feel more like filler rather than having a purpose to drive the plot forward. For example, the business trip to Miami, it felt more like a silly event to add romantic conflict rather than to drive the story forward with a learning experience for Rebecca. Let's talk characters. The characters in The Devil Wears Prada have more depth. We learn more about them so they feel more real and it's easier to empathize with them. Let's start with the bosses. Miranda initially comes off as cold, heartless, ruthless, demanding, demeaning even. And don't get me wrong, she is most of those things, but she is also ambitious, cunning. She loves her job. She will do anything to keep it. And she also expects the best out of everyone, even her assistants, because she knows how important this magazine is. She is also not immune to the names the tabloids call her. She is genuinely sorry for the dissolution of her marriage, and she does really love her 2 daughters. She's portrayed as the villain, and I suppose she is, but her motives and intentions are revealed as the movie progresses, as Andy develops a closer relationship to her, which humanizes her and makes her feel less one-dimensional. Yeah, I could not tell you much about Alette Taylor, the editor-in-chief of Alette magazine. She's more kind and understanding, but she's more of a secondary character who tries to hire Rebecca under false pretenses.
Well, they're not affordable fashion. Fear not. Chez Alette, we print the prices very small. And after all, what are credit cards for, huh?
Luke Brandon, Rebecca's actual boss at Financial Savings Magazine, has a cliche background. He is a rich Nepo baby with connections that he wants to eschew in favor of forging his own path without using the power of his last name. Typical. He's passionate about finances, educating people about finances, transparency about finances, very left brain of him. This side, very left brain of him. He also wants to run his own magazine, like be the editor-in-chief of his own magazine. I don't know what his actual position is at Financial Savings Magazine, but apparently it's not editor-in-chief. I don't know. And he's also secretly knowledgeable about the fashion industry because of his rich Nepo baby background, which Rebecca figures out and loves and delivers us this famous line.
You speak Prada?
Nigel and Emily, Andy's coworkers in The Devil Wears Prada, I feel like even have more depth than this guy. Let's start with Nigel.
All right, everyone, gird your loins.
Nigel believes in his work. He believes in the fashion industry, in the power it holds in affecting and transforming people's lives. He's passionate about it. He's excited at the prospect of running French runway. That's like his dream. And it ultimately doesn't happen, which absolutely devastates him. He's the type of character the movie stereotypes about the fashion industry. The mule, the sucker, the one who gets stabbed in the back because of someone else's ambitions. But we deeply sympathize with him when he's so excited to be promoted only to be sorely let down, which segues us into Emily.
Andrea Sachs? Yes? Great. Human resources certainly has an odd sense of humor. Follow me.
Emily is desperate to advance her career. She has been promoted to first assistant after the previous first assistant was promoted to do something else, I guess, and now she's just waiting her turn. Her ultimate goal, at least in the movie short term that we see, is to go to Paris Fashion Week, which is the responsibility of the first assistant.
Most importantly, I get to go with her to Paris for Fashion Week in the fall.
Don't get me wrong, she's also condescending, acerbic, mean even. She gives mean girl energy, which is another stereotype of the fashion industry. Whereas Nigel, I would say, is maybe just like more straight up and he doesn't put up with Andy's whining bullshit.
You are not trying. You are whining.
But she also has high aspirations and wants to go far in the fashion industry. So it's hard to fault her, even though, yes, she is mean to Andy and she has to overcome some of her own superficiality and be humbled in the end by Andy's generosity when she gives Emily all of those dresses from Paris Fashion Week.
I have all these clothes from Paris and I don't have any place to wear them, so I was wondering if you could take them off my hands.
She's a strong character. She has a strong personality, a strong presence. We learn a lot about Emily. We learn a lot about all of the characters, even just in body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, which I think is a testament to the actor's skills. But Emily is not a bad guy. She's not the bad guy. She just doesn't have the patience to deal with Andy's bullshit and lack of professionalism, frankly. In Confessions of a Shopaholic, the most secondary character is Rebecca's best friend, Suze, about whom all I know is she's getting married and she is very supportive of her friend's shopping addiction and debt. Like, she helps Rebecca lie to the debt collector. She even rips up one of Rebecca's rent checks, which I think is really, really nice. But that's it. There is no more depth. We don't learn anything else about her. She is rightfully upset when she finds out that Rebecca sold her bridesmaid's dress, but she forgives Rebecca in the end and everything is fine, and that's it. There really is nothing more from this character. Andy's friends even go through their own journey. We see how their relationships shift as the movie progresses. Nate is a chef, the female friend is a photographer, the male friend does something in corporate. I don't know. We don't really understand what it is that he does, but we see each of them in their jobs, or we see them talk about their jobs. And we see the dissolution of Andy's friendship with all of them as she gets sucked into her job. We see how unsupportive they are, how they demean her job, how they make fun of her job, which I think we as a society have clocked onto looking back and reflecting on this movie, how not nice they were with Andy about her job.
It's not clocking to you. It's not clocking to you that I'm standing on business, is it?
Alicia in Confessions is the main villain of the movie. She is after both the job at Alette and Luke. She's also vain, self-centered, stuck-up, snobby, condescending, but still very one-dimensional in a way that does not feel as deep as Emily. So she's a typical mean girl character with nothing else. Not to say that mean girl characters cannot have depth, quite the opposite, which is why this character is so disappointing and forgettable. She could have been a bigger foil to Rebecca. She could have done more nefarious, actual mean girl things. For example, she could have been the one to rip all of the sequins off of Rebecca's dinner jacket at that party, or she could have been the one to intentionally switch letters between Alette and financial savings, but she was kind of just there. Like, I think one of the best mean girl characters is Regina George from Mean Girls. She is vindictive, manipulative, two-faced, vain, which makes her the perfect villain character. Like this character, Alicia, she kind of just did the job. She just did the thing. The true villain of Confessions is Derek Smythe, the debt collector, but arguably he was just doing his job. Yes, he's relentless and incredibly intrusive, but $10,000 of debt is a lot of money. Ruining Rebecca's talk show, though, was unforgivable, and so receiving the debt payment in pennies at the end was justifiable, in my opinion. Lastly, I want to point out that both characters of these movies do have supportive parents. Andy's dad comes to visit and he voices his and Andy's mom's concerns about the hours of this job, how she has been writing. Rebecca's parents even offered to sell their RV to help pay off some of Rebecca's debts. To talk about the main characters themselves, both have unique character arcs as they learn and grow throughout their respective movies. And to interject here, rewatching a bunch of clips from the movies and reading through the comments of those video clips, I realized why no one tolerates Andy's bullshit at work. She needs this job. Like, she desperately needs this job, but she doesn't take it seriously. She doesn't do any research about what this magazine is, who runs it. She comes in completely unprepared. She is also so disdainful and condescending to the industry in which she now works. She is ungrateful, whiny, and I understand, yeah, your job sucks, but you're starting at the bottom. But that is the exact attitude we see her overcome throughout the movie. She says she won't let this job take over her life. That is, of course, inevitably what happens. Her social life comes undone. Her romantic relationship with Nate comes undone. She falls for the romanticized version of the job through no fault of her own. I understand, me too. If I was in the same position, that would probably happen to me too. So I get it. She steps over Emily to get ahead, perhaps inadvertently, just like Miranda does to Nigel, and she realizes how much this job has changed her for the worse, and so she decides to quit. She learned a lot from this job. She gained a better sense of style too. Rebecca also goes through a lot. She has her own journey of self-discovery and growth. She's a shopping addict. She loves the rush of a new purchase, loves the comfort of a new clothing item, and girl, I get it, that dopamine hit, love it. But some of the more egregious moments include getting in a fight at the sample sale over a pair of boots, breaking up the purchase of the infamous green scarf over 5 credit cards, and when her dream job of working at Alette Fashion magazine falls through and she somehow lands a job at the sibling magazine, Financial Savings, she is able to learn about the importance of finances, about financial responsibility. She is able to overcome her shopping addiction with the help of her friends and family, and she is able to seek forgiveness from her loved ones for lying and putting them through difficult situations, all while falling in love. I really like Rebecca's character arc. Actually, she has to overcome a lot. Addiction is no joke, and it's refreshing to see the dark side of shopping addiction, over consumerism. I think it's a lesson more people need to learn and be aware of today. And this segues me into what I think Confessions does well, one of those things being Rebecca's and Luke's separate character motivations. Their goals and ambitions help to ground them as real, believable, tangible, three-dimensional characters. Arguably the only two well-rounded, fleshed-out characters, in my opinion. Rebecca dreams of working at Alette Fashion magazine, to be taken seriously as a fashion journalist because she's a journalist and she loves fashion. That's it. That's all I need. Character motivations do not need to be complicated. It just needs to be relatable and understandable. We need to know why. And we see at the beginning of the movie, I guess they're like flashbacks of a young Rebecca going shopping with her mom, wanting something prettier than just an ugly brown or black pair of shoes, seeing all the ladies going out shopping, trying on these beautiful clothes, having a good time, instilling in her this seed of fashion being fun and beautiful. The audience is shown from the very beginning. We understand what Rebecca's motivations are and why. Thus, she feels grounded and believable. Luke's motivations, while slightly cliche, are also rooted in reality and relatability. He just wants to be able to open up his own magazine about finances without the supposed burden of his well-known family last name. We see him gain his own self-confidence throughout the movie, enough to take a leap of faith, leave Financial Savings Magazine to open up his own. He's patient, understanding, caring, and so he also feels very grounded. Both Isla Fisher and Hugh Dancy do a great job in their roles. I think they have very believable chemistry. I also appreciate how Confessions takes addiction seriously, how it does not shy around all aspects of it. Denial, relapse, trying to get help when you're not ready, getting help when you are ready, understanding the impact your actions have on your loved ones. It shows that progress is not linear. Sometimes you also need help from external sources. And yet, despite all of that, Confessions of a Shopaholic has been mostly forgotten. It does not have nearly as many, if any, iconic moments like The Devil Wears Prada. And why is that when both are set in the fashion journalism world, when both Rebecca and Andy go through similar character growths? Some of the negative reviews on Rotten Tomatoes cite how Confessions of a Shopaholic was released with poor timing in 2009 after the 2008 financial crisis and stock market crash. They say there was not enough emphasis on the ills of shopping and overconsumption. Some say the movie was not critical enough about overconsumption. They say the message was muddled and dulled by all of the fancy brands and flashy montages. Personally, I think The Devil Wears Prada works for a lot of little reasons. First of all, it's a good story. It's a great satire that somehow is able to both ridicule and respect the fashion industry. It's less silly and more serious. It has deeper characters who are better understood. Also, the attention to detail is amazing. For example, Andy learning to take a notebook into Miranda's office whenever she gets called in, the elevator encounter with Irv Ravitz about the $300,000 photo shoot ridiculousness, whatever is going on there, the constant remarks about weight and eating. It's all ridiculous, but it purposefully highlights the ridiculousness of such minute details from Andy's and the audience's perspectives. We basically go on the same journey as Andy as she learns about the fashion industry, sees all of its flaws, learns to take it seriously. It's a more believable world. Plus, there really is no denying the power of the all-star cast. Meryl Streep, Stanley Tucci, strong performances by up-and-coming Emily Blunt, also Anne Hathaway. Amazing. And trust me, I understand The Devil Wears Prada is far from perfect. It still is very much a product of its time. And the movie at the time of release did get mixed reviews from fashion industry insiders, but it was pretty spot on otherwise. I admit I have an overly biased opinion, but The Devil Wears Prada excels in almost all fronts compared to Confessions of a Shopaholic in terms of character, storyline, definitely costume design. Confessions of a Shopaholic is fun and funny and silly, but a little bit too over the top. Plus, our only two fully fleshed out characters are Rebecca and Luke. I don't think anyone could have predicted at the time of release just how impactful The Devil Wears Prada has become, but with so much time having passed, I understand how timeless this movie feels, how the references don't feel dated, something I'm really scared is going to happen with The Devil Wears Prada 2. Confessions of a Shopaholic is tongue-in-cheek on purpose with its silliness and campiness, but it just doesn't translate across time in the same way. The costumes especially are egregious. Yes. In the same way, I don't think the Emily in Paris costume design will age well at all. As Yves Saint Laurent said, fashion fades, style is eternal. There is a way to make stylish, fashion-forward outfits that age well. The Devil Wears Prada is style. Confessions of a Shopaholic is fashion. And this is not me trying to shame Confessions at all. It's a funny, good time. There are great laughs, but there is just not as big of a spark as The Devil Wears Prada. Do you know what I mean? Am I even explaining this right? Okay, whatever. Anyways, that's why I think The Devil Wears Prada has gained such a cult following. It really is hard to beat. Now, I don't really have a set conclusion for this. I more so really just wanted to dive into The Devil Wears Prada and Confessions of a Shopaholic. It was interesting to me understanding why one has done so well and stood the test of time compared to the other. But let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. What you think of both movies. Have you even seen both movies? Also, what you think of the fact that they're coming out with The Devil Wears Prada #2. Interested, curious. I am not excited, to be completely honest, with the state of film right now. We will see. I think I'm going to wait to see what the reviews say before I even give it a chance. But anyways, thank you so much for... I really need to stop talking now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again later. Bye!